My brand analysis for MG Motor, a global brand with British heritage. MG stands for Morris Garages and is a nod to William Morris. Cecil Kimber joined Morris Garages in 1921 as a salesman but was soon promoted to general manager. He saw an opportunity for bespoke and separate MG models. He saw many models introduced, including the acclaimed 1428 model, which was the first MG to wear the trademark. MG moved to a new Oxford factory in 1927 and the MG Car Company was formed in 1928. At the break of the Second World War in 1939, Ambington was halted for car production, but was still in production mode, but this time for machines of war. Kimber stayed in his job until 1941 when he fell out with Lord Nuffield, the owner of the company. At the break of the Second World War, once the last car was completed and shipped out of the finishing shop by Kimber and his associates, he went looking for war contracts. In 1941, a contract was given which would have repercussions for everyone within the organisation and question the future of the MG brand. The front section of a new bomber was the contract, but was soon to see Kimber out of the door after 20 years as the driving force of MG. Sadly, Kimber was killed in a train accident in 1943, so was unable to see his dream through. The MG factory in 1945 was as keen as any to get back into production. However, as steel was still a commodity, steel was only granted in proportion to export sales, something MG didn't have as their sales were exclusively in the UK. In 1945, after a brief discussion about the new model, the TC Midget entered production with stateside sales next on the hit list for MG. As well as the MG models, the Mini was part of the same story and was a huge success. There were problems in 1964 when it was revealed that 44% of strikes were BMC plants, with just 11% of their Ford counterparts. That meant in 1970, the company had made no profit due to strikes as they were so frequent they had disrupted the management team and had a strain on them. Prior to this, in 1974, British Leyland went to the government for financial aid. In December of that year, it became government collateral for future loans. The Labour government at the time demanded that British Leyland exported models to earn their allocation of steel and to establish MG in the North American market. Some key models in the 1960s include the MGB GT, which was produced between 1962 and 1980 at the Ambington plant continuously and was built as the modern-day sports car. It was launched at the British Motor Show in London in '62 and was given great acclaim. Autocar described the car as superior, and Motoring News was saying that it was the best all-round sports car in the market. It was noted how much space the model had, but MG wasn't the only manufacturer offering specifications like this. They were doing it better though. The MGB GT was on par with rivals with prices at £690, so were competitive and in some cases cheaper. This was the final model to be built at the plant until the brand was temporarily suspended in 1980. 3 years later, in 1965, the MGB GT Coupe was launched at the same show in London and was billed as truly amazing. John Thornley, general manager of MG Car Company, called it a car which no managing director would be ashamed to turn up into the office in. The car had a much more refined interior and a design fastback by Pininfarina, who designed the Ferrari 725. In '67, the MGC GT was launched and appeared to be the same model as the MGB, but with bigger tyres and wheels tucked under the arches, making it stand a little taller. However, this lacked the sparkle the press, the public, and most importantly MG themselves had anticipated, and the car failed to capitalise on MGB's success and was discontinued after 2 years. In the 1980s, the MG brand was back. On the back of Ambington closing, the Austin Metro was redesigned as the MG Metro, but MG fans were worried that the car was just a badly engineered effort to make a sportier, upmarket car out of something somewhat mundane. The car was front-wheel drive and had a reworked camshaft, bigger valves and power increased by 20%, with the turbo model boasting 100 brake horsepower and a 0 to 60 time in 10 seconds. This wasn't the only MG model which was badge engineered. The Maestro and Montego were also transformed into MG models. On the outside, the MG Maestro wasn't that much different to the Austin model, but inside the R-Series engine was tuned to 103 bhp and was branded a gem by the Little Book of MG. In '85, the MG Montego Turbo was launched and was the fastest saloon in the world, capable of 124 mph and a 7-second 0 to 60. What came next was an exciting time for MG and it took it back to its roots. In 1992, Rover launched the RB8, which showcased a real MG sports car and a true rival to the MX-5, which was launched 3 years previous. The markets couldn't have been any different for the MG. The engine under the bonnet was based upon a Range Rover engine and was 3.9 litres. The car was in direct competition with sports cars in the segment above, with a TBR Chimera, which could easily see MG off in every aspect. The RB8 was called the first true MG in 12 years, and sales were steady, and 1,983 cars were built, a majority of them were exported to Japan, and it taught Rover Group a lesson about what the customer wanted, a true British sports car. The key models in the 80s and 90s were the Maestro, the Montego, the Metro Turbo, the RB8 and MGF, which was soon to be launched in 95. In going into the millennium, and BMW wanted to get rid of MG and Rover, the chairman at the time speculated to Car Magazine that the Rover R30 replacement will be shared with a new 2 Series model and both cars will be built at Longbridge. This wasn't to be. Government asked questions about the new owners whether they could really build 200,000 cars per year without a backer. Enter Phoenix Venture Holdings, who bought the company for a mere £10. When BMW sold Rover Group, they kept hold of the Mini brand, sold Land Rover to Ford, and the remainder, including the MG badge, went to Phoenix. MG Rover was pretty much a start-up operation according to AR Online, when Phoenix had to move the 75 production line to Longbridge from Cowley, as well as set up design studios, hire staff, and continue IT systems. In 2002, MG Rover designed the RDX60, which would hopefully turn the company's fortunes around. SAIC, who would go on to part-own the MG brand, pulled out of a £1 billion joint venture. However, this was after the board of MG Rover signed over the rights to the Rover 2575 TF and K Series engine for £65 million. MG Rover entered administration on the 7th of April 2005, costing 6,000 jobs. In 2005, shortly after MG Rover went into administration, the MG brand was bought by China's Nanjing Automobile Corporation for £50 million. They pledged to restart production as soon as they could, but this was put on hold as they moved the bulk of the production equipment to China and merged with SAIC. Standard specification TF models were produced at Longbridge, with an 85th anniversary model also produced until 2011. In 2011, the first all-new MG to be made in 16 years was finally produced and rolled out of the Longbridge factory. The MG6, which was a fastback model, was initially offered in 2011, but a saloon model called the Bagnette was also added soon after. Image. The image of the MG brand is different between the media and the enthusiasts. Top Gear called the MG3 when it was produced in Birmingham flawed in a few key areas, and the MG ZS had naff engines and no safety kit. However, the MG brand still has a very strong following, with enthusiasts regularly meeting and sharing their stories across the country and indeed world. The rivals to MG are previously the Mazda MX-5, which was people who wanted a cheap sports car for thrills. But with regard to the current range, the Nissan Qashqai is a rival to the MG GS, the Dacia Duster for the MG ZS, and MG3 is a rival to the Ford Fiesta. One major failure of the MG Motor Company, as it is now, is that there is no production held at the spiritual home at Longbridge in Birmingham. The MG-TF, MG6 and MG3 were all produced in complete knockdown kit form, but full production was never committed to. However, design and engineering is still at Longbridge, which keeps with the British theme, but as I've said previously, this isn't enough for some fans. Another strength of the company is their pricing. They are not pricing themselves out of the market. For example, a new MG ZS is priced from £12,495 and is offered with a 7-year warranty. Compare this to a Renault Capture and you get a 3-year warranty and the base model is £3,000 more expensive. Current models are the MG3, MG ZS and MG GS. During my research for the MG brand, they launched the new ZS compact SUV. I attended the launch in October and got to drive the car along with the rest of the press. However, at the end of last year, the ZS only received a 3-star rating from Euro NCAP, which is due to the MG not being fitted with an advanced safety kit. At the start of November, the Motoring Press were critical of the MG ZS, with Auto Express commenting, if you're after a cheap, comfortable, practical, small SUV, it should earn a spot on your shopping list. However, Andrew Brady of Motoring Research called the ZS cheap, but not cheerful. Where does MG Motor go from here? The MG brand is toying with the idea of electric vehicles, with the Rowe E50 and MG E-Motion both shown at various motor shows, and the Rowe was tested by Autocar at the link below. The sales have been steadily increasing, with 4,400 new models finding homes in 2017, and MG is also launching facelifted models such as the MG3 and the all-new models such as the MG6. The MG ZS and GS have since joined the lineup.